wind howled, a relentless predator tearing at the fragile canvas of their tent. Inside, 9 experienced trekkers, veterans of the unforgiving Ural Mountains, huddled against the biting cold, their breath misting in the frigid air. Outside, beyond the thin nylon, lay a desolate, snow-covered slope known only to a few indigenous Mansi hunters. It was February 2, 1959, and what began as an ambitious ski expedition into the northern Urals was about to become one of history's most enduring and chilling mysteries: the Dyatlov Pass incident. Imagine, if you will, the sheer audacity of their journey. Led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student with a passion for adventure, this group was not composed of novices. They were seasoned explorers, fit, well-equipped, and knowledgeable about surviving in extreme conditions. Their goal? To reach Otorten Mountain, a peak whose name in the Mansi language chillingly translates to "Don't go there." They were expected back by February 12th, but when the deadline passed without a word, a frantic search began. What rescuers found, weeks later, would defy logic and spawn a multitude of theories, each more bizarre than the last. Their tent, discovered on the slopes of Kholat Syakho, Mansi for Dead Mountain, was ripped open from the inside. Inside, personal belongings were scattered, yet valuables like money and cameras remained untouched. The scene was one of inexplicable panic, as if an unseen terror had driven them to flee into the sub-zero night, clad only in their night clothes, without boots, without proper winter gear. The first bodies were found about 1.5 miles downhill near the edge of a forest. 2 men, Yuri Krivonischenko and Yuri Doroshenko, lay beside the remains of a small campfire, their hands badly burned, their clothes showing signs of scorching. Despite the infernal cold, they were barely dressed, one wearing only underwear. Their feet, bare and exposed, were severely bruised. Further up the slope, in the direction of the abandoned tent, lay Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. They appeared to have died attempting to return to the tent, their bodies arranged in a desperate uphill climb. Slobodin had a fractured skull, but the medical examiner deemed it non-fatal. Dubinina had severe bruising, but again, no immediate cause of death was apparent. Dyatlov, too, had no major external injuries. The initial conclusion for these 5 was hypothermia. But it was the discovery 2 months later of the remaining 4 bodies that would truly plunge the incident into the realm of the macabre. Buried under 15 feet of snow in a ravine away from the initial discovery site, Valentin Volkov, Alexander Kolevatov, Ludmila Dubinina, and Semyon Zolotaryov presented a horrifying tableau. They were more fully dressed than the others, some even wearing clothes stripped from their deceased companions, but their injuries were catastrophic. Dubinina was found kneeling by a stream, her tongue, eyes, and part of her jaw missing. Zolotaryov had similar facial trauma and massive chest injuries, including fractured ribs. Kolevatov had a deformed skull. Most chillingly, their clothes, when tested, showed elevated levels of radiation. The official Soviet investigation, hampered by secrecy and a rush to conclusion, ultimately stated that the trekkers died from a compelling natural force. This vague pronouncement did little to quell the public's unease and only fueled speculation. What could possibly explain such a confluence of horrors? A tent ripped from the inside, 9 experienced hikers fleeing into the deadly cold, some with inexplicable internal injuries, missing body parts, and radiation on their clothing. The Dyatlov Pass incident became a playground for theories, each attempting to piece together the fragments of this frozen puzzle. Let us delve into these theories, examining the evidence, the inconsistencies, and the sheer human effort to comprehend the incomprehensible. The avalanche. This is often presented as the most rational explanation, yet it struggles to reconcile with many key details. Proponents suggest a slab avalanche, a delayed snowslide descended on the tent, causing the trekkers to cut their way out and flee. The internal injuries, particularly the chest and skull fractures, could be consistent with being crushed by a large amount of snow. The missing eyes and tongue could be attributed to scavenging animals after death. Evidence 4. The tent was on a slope, and heavy snowfall is common in the Urals. The severe blunt force trauma injuries could be explained by an avalanche. The apparent panic and hasty departure from the tent could be due to the immediate threat of being buried. Evidence against. Expert mountaineers have argued that the slope was not steep enough for a typical slab avalanche. It was a relatively gentle incline, not a classic avalanche chute. Rescuers noted that the tent's supporting poles were still upright. If a massive avalanche had struck, it would likely have flattened the tent completely. The cuts in the tent were from the inside, suggesting the occupants were trying to escape, not that the tent was crushed from without. Searchers found a trail of footprints leading downhill from the tent, indicating the trekkers walked or stumbled away. If an avalanche had occurred, their tracks would have been obscured or obliterated. The bodies were found in various locations, some quite far from the tent, suggesting a more prolonged flight and individual deaths rather than a single crushing event. While scavenging animals could explain some dismemberment, the precision of the missing tongue and eyes without other significant animal predation signs remains a difficult point. An avalanche does not explain the presence of radiation on their clothing. Despite its initial appeal as a simple explanation, the avalanche theory fails to account for too many crucial pieces of evidence, particularly the tent's state, the clear escape route, and the nature of the injuries. The Mansi attack. The indigenous Mansi people inhabited the region, and initially suspicion fell upon them. The area was considered sacred by the Mansi, and trespassers could be viewed as a threat. The violence of some injuries, particularly the missing tongue and eyes, which some cultural practices associate with ritualistic punishment, lent a grim plausibility to this idea. Evidence 4. The remote location, the sacred nature of the mountain, and the severity of some injuries. There were no other footprints found in the snow besides those of the 9 trekkers. If Mansi attackers had been present, their tracks would have been evident. Money, cameras, and other valuables were left untouched in the tent. If the attack was motivated by robbery or revenge, these items would likely have been taken. The Mansi people actively assisted in the search and investigation, and none of them exhibited any signs of guilt or knowledge of an attack. Mansi hunters and elders stated they had no reason to attack the group, and that such violence was not part of their customs towards peaceful visitors. While horrific, the internal blunt force trauma did not perfectly align with typical weapon injuries. The Mansi attack theory was quickly dismissed by investigators due to the overwhelming lack of evidence and the uncharacteristic nature of the alleged crime. However, it lingered in the popular imagination, a testament to the human tendency to seek an identifiable enemy in the face of the unknown. The military experiment cover-up. This theory gains considerable traction due to the Cold War context and the Soviet Union's penchant for secrecy. It suggests that the hikers stumbled upon a secret military test, perhaps involving experimental weapons, and were either killed to prevent them from revealing what they saw or were directly affected by the test itself. Evidence 4. Other trekking groups in the region, around the same time, reported strange, glowing orange spheres in the sky. These reports were largely dismissed, but fueled speculation about secret military activity. The presence of radiation on some of the victims' clothing is a significant piece of evidence that an external, non-natural source was involved. This is difficult to explain otherwise. the rapid closure of the investigation, the sealing of documents, and the official compelling natural force explanation raised suspicions of a cover-up. The area was also closed to the public for years after the incident. Some suggest the blunt force trauma without external wounds could be caused by powerful concussive blasts, such as those from an experimental weapon or even a low-yield nuclear device. Some sources claim that medical examiners were initially told to keep certain findings secret and that the discoloration of the bodies, described as a deep tan, was unusual. Evidence against. No definitive proof of a missile test or other military activity has ever surfaced in declassified documents. There were no crater formations, widespread destruction, or other telltale signs of a large explosion near the tent or the bodies. While intriguing, eyewitness accounts of strange lights are often unreliable and can have mundane explanations, e.g., rocket launches from a distant facility or atmospheric phenomena. While radiation was found, its exact nature and origin are still debated. Some argue it could have come from a prior encounter, or even from the trekkers' own equipment, e.g., luminous watch dials, though the levels were considered higher than background. This theory remains one of the most compelling because it addresses the explanations for the radiation, the unusual injuries, and the governmental secrecy. It taps into the public's inherent distrust of authorities and the dark mystique of the Cold War. The idea that a powerful state would sacrifice a few citizens to protect a secret is not entirely beyond the realm of possibility. Infrasound and induced panic. A more recent scientific theory, gaining traction due to modern understanding of atmospheric phenomena, proposes that powerful infrasound waves could have caused the trekkers' panicked flight. Infrasound, low-frequency sound waves below the range of human hearing, can be generated by certain weather conditions, such as vortex shedding from strong winds interacting with topographic features like Colaziaco. How it works. Exposure to strong infrasound can induce a range of disturbing physiological and psychological effects, including anxiety, dread, panic, nausea, dizziness, pressure in the chest, and even hallucinations. It can make people feel an inexplicable sense of terror, leading them to flee from a perceived but unseen threat. Evidence 4. This theory provides a plausible mechanism for the trekkers' sudden, desperate flight from the tent, even if there was no visible threat. The unique topography of Colaziaco, combined with severe winds, could create conditions conducive to infrasound generation. While speculative, some argue that extreme panic and physiological distress from infrasound could lead to unusual stress on the body, although this doesn't directly explain the severe blunt force trauma. The trekkers running in various directions, seemingly without a clear plan, could be attributed to a state of profound disorientation and terror. Evidence against. It's impossible to retroactively prove that infrasound was present on that specific night in 1959. While it explains panic, it doesn't offer a direct mechanism for the fractured ribs, skull damage, or missing body parts. It requires an additional explanation for these, perhaps combining with the idea of falls in the dark or post-mortem scavenging. This theory does not explain the presence of radiation on the clothing. The infrasound theory is intriguing because it addresses the core mystery of the irrational panic. It suggests that the environment itself became the killer, not through a direct physical assault, but through a terrifying psychological one. Paradoxical undressing and hypothermia. This theory attempts to explain the partial undressing of some of the victims. Paradoxical undressing is a known phenomenon in advanced stages of hypothermia, where the dying person experiencing a sudden sensation of intense heat begins to shed their clothing, ironically accelerating their death from exposure. Evidence 4. Several of the initial bodies found were lightly clothed or nearly naked, despite the extreme cold. The bare feet and hands showing bruising could be consistent with stumbling through deep snow and icy conditions. Hypothermia was indeed cited as the cause of death for the first 5 bodies found.
Evidence against. This theory doesn't explain why the tent was cut open from the inside. While hypothermia explains the death of some, it doesn't account for the fractured skulls, ribs, and missing body parts of the others. These are not typical hypothermia injuries. Again, this is a glaring omission. The fact that some of the later bodies were more fully clothed, even wearing clothes from their dead companions, suggests a period of conscious decision-making and survival attempts, not just an immediate onset of paradoxical undressing for everyone. While paradoxical undressing is a real phenomenon, it likely only explains a part of the horror, specifically the state of dress of some of the victims, and doesn't encompass the entirety of the incident. A variant of the avalanche theory, katabatic wind or slab release with subsequent disorientation and injuries. In recent years, researchers, notably from ETH Zurich and the EPFL in Switzerland, have revisited the avalanche theory, adding a new layer of scientific modeling. Their research, published in 2021, suggests a specific type of avalanche could have occurred, one that is less common but fits the circumstances better. The mechanism. They propose that a slab avalanche was triggered, not by fresh snow, but by a process called creeping snow or a wind slab release. Strong katabatic winds, downslope winds common in mountain regions, could have transported snow and created a dense, unstable slab higher up the slope. The trekker's tent was pitched on a terrace carved into the slope, but the slab could have formed above them. Triggering event. The trekkers themselves, by cutting into the snow to set up their tent, or even just by their movement and weight over time, could have destabilized this hidden slab, triggering its slow but powerful release. The sequence of events. Slab release. A block of snow, not a massive, fast-moving avalanche, slides down and impacts the tent. Tent impact. This impact could explain the internal blunt force trauma, particularly the fractured ribs and skull. They would have struck them while lying down, explaining injuries to the back and sides. Panic and escape. Trapped and injured, the trekkers cut their way out of the tent in a panicked state, fearing further collapse or suffocation. Disoriented flight. Injured, disoriented, and without proper clothing, in the dark and blizzard conditions, they flee downhill. Hypothermia and further injuries. Some succumb to hypothermia relatively quickly. Others, more gravely injured, fall into the ravine or sustain further trauma trying to navigate the treacherous terrain in the dark. The missing soft tissues, eyes and tongue, are attributed to scavenging by animals in the weeks before discovery. The radiation. Still a lingering puzzle, but some researchers suggest it could be residual radiation from their own equipment, e.g. luminous watch dials that used radium paint, which was common at the time, or perhaps even from clothing they wore as part of their work or studies. Evidence 4. Scientific modeling. The ETH-EPFL study used computational models to show how a relatively small, delayed slab avalanche could generate enough force to cause the observed injuries, even on a gentle slope. Delayed release. This theory accounts for why the trekkers were inside the tent when it happened, suggesting the slab took time to form and then release. Internal trauma explained. This is the strongest point, directly linking the snow impact to the severe non-external injuries. Explains the cuts, the urgency of escaping a collapsing tent due to snow pressure. The search for cover. The trekkers initially going towards the tree line could be seen as an attempt to find shelter after the initial trauma. Evidence against. Still debated by some experts. While scientifically robust, some avalanche experts still maintain the slope was too gentle. The radiation explanation is weak. Attributing radiation solely to luminous watches or other minor sources doesn't fully convince everyone, especially given some reports of higher levels. The missing soft tissue argument. While animal scavenging is possible, the very specific nature of Dubinina's injuries, tongue and eyes gone, but not other significant facial disfigurement, remains unsettling to many. This refined avalanche theory is arguably the strongest natural explanation yet put forth, as it uses scientific principles to address some of the most puzzling aspects of the injuries. It takes the natural force from vague to specific. The enduring mystery, why it still captivates. Even with scientific advancements, the Dyatlov Pass incident retains its chilling grip on our collective imagination. Why? The human element. These were real people, young, vibrant, and full of life, on an adventure. Their tragic end resonates on a deeply human level. We imagine their fear, their struggle, their desperate attempt to survive. The unanswered questions. Even the most robust theories leave some lingering doubts. The radiation, the specifics of the soft tissue damage, the orange spheres, these elements resist a perfectly neat explanation. The Cold War context. The Soviet Union's inherent secrecy during the Cold War makes any incident involving unexplained deaths immediately suspect. The idea of a cover-up is inherently fascinating and alarming. The impossible conditions. The sheer brutal reality of the environment they faced, combined with their inexplicable actions, creates a tableau of stark horror. Fleeing into a sub-zero blizzard without clothes feels like a nightmare, not real-life decision. The isolation. The remoteness of the pass, far from any habitation, adds to the eerie atmosphere. They were truly alone against whatever force they encountered. The evolution of theories. As new information emerges or as scientific understanding improves, new theories are generated or old ones are refined. This ongoing intellectual puzzle keeps the story alive.
Beyond the theories, a deeper look at the victims' final hours. Let's try to reconstruct, based on the most plausible elements of various theories, what their last night might have been like. Imagine the 9 trekkers having pitched their tent on the relatively exposed slope of Kholat Syakul. The wind is fierce, but they are experienced. Inside, they are preparing for bed, some already in their sleep sacks, others still getting organized. The warmth of the tent, however relative, is a comfort against the -20 to 30 degrees Celsius outside. Suddenly, a muffled roar. Not an avalanche in the classic sense, but a heavy, dense slab of snow, destabilized by their tense placement or the relentless wind, silently slides down and impacts their tent. It's not a complete burial, but the weight and force are immense. Some are directly struck, sustaining terrible internal injuries, fractured ribs, head trauma. The tent poles groan, fabric tears, and snow begins to pour in. Panic erupts. They are injured, disoriented, and the tent is collapsing around them. Suffocation is a real fear. In their desperation, they grab knives and cut their way out, rather than fumbling with zippers. They emerge into the pitch-black, howling blizzard, half-dressed, barefooted, and traumatized. The priority is to get away from the perceived danger of the collapsing snow. They stumble downhill towards the faint promise of the tree line which might offer some shelter. The initial 5, perhaps less severely injured or simply caught in the most immediate rush of terror, run further, losing their way in the blinding snow and wind. They succumb to hypothermia relatively quickly. Their bodies, later found, show the effects of extreme cold, some having paradoxically undressed in their final moments. The remaining 4, more gravely injured or perhaps attempting to provide some first aid to each other, make it to the ravine. They try to build a fire, but the conditions are too harsh. They are suffering from their initial injuries, crushed chests, fractured skulls. In a desperate attempt to stay warm, or perhaps in a delirium, some strip clothing from their deceased companions. Ludmila Dubinina, perhaps disoriented or in extreme pain, falls into the icy stream in the ravine. Her tongue, eyes, and jaw could be lost due to a combination of post-mortem scavenging by small animals. Voles, weasels, and martens are active in winter, and the effects of being submerged in freezing water, which could accelerate decomposition and tissue loss in a specific area. The blunt force trauma of Zolotarev and Kolevatov suggests severe impact, perhaps from tumbling into the ravine or being struck by rocks hidden beneath the snow. The radiation on their clothing? This remains the most stubbornly unexplained detail. If it wasn't from a military test, perhaps it was from the radium-painted watch dial some might have worn, or even from dust picked up during their descent if they passed near a naturally radioactive deposit. However, the levels reported, while not lethal, were considered elevated, making this a point of intense contention. The Soviet legacy and the secrecy. The official Soviet investigation's conclusion of a compelling natural force was, in hindsight, a masterpiece of bureaucratic obfuscation. It provided a convenient explanation without providing any real answers, allowing the state to avoid further scrutiny. The documents were sealed, the area declared off-limits, and the incident slowly faded from public discourse, only to resurface after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The refusal to fully investigate and disclose details only amplified suspicions of a cover-up. Was it a failed missile test? A secret bioweapon experiment? A natural phenomenon that Soviet science couldn't or wouldn't explain? The lack of transparency allowed the legend to grow, weaving together fact, speculation, and outright myth. In 2019, the Russian Prosecutor General's office reopened the investigation, declaring that an avalanche indeed was the most plausible explanation. Their findings largely aligned with the recent scientific modeling, emphasizing the difficult weather conditions and a delayed slab avalanche as the cause. They concluded that the trekkers fled due to the avalanche, then succumbed to hypothermia and a combination of their injuries and the elements. They largely dismissed the radiation aspect as negligible or from external non-catastrophic sources. However, even this official resolution has not fully satisfied everyone. For many, the details of the injuries, the radiation, and the sheer terror of their flight continue to point to something more extraordinary, more sinister, or at the very least, far more complex than a simple avalanche. Conclusion: the enduring riddle of the Dyatlov Pass. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a testament to the power of the unknown. It is a story that intertwines human endurance with unimaginable horror, scientific puzzle with paranormal whispers, and the brutal reality of nature with the chilling hand of secrecy. While recent scientific models offer a compelling explanation for the physical trauma and the initial flight, the complete picture remains elusive. The image of those 9 experienced hikers fleeing into the deadly cold, half-clothed, into the embrace of Dead Mountain, continues to haunt. Perhaps the true horror lies not in what exactly happened, but in the terrifying suddenness of it all, the complete reversal of their fortunes, and the enduring mystery that prevents their spirits from ever truly resting. The Dyatlov Pass is a stark reminder that sometimes even the most prepared can be overwhelmed by forces beyond their comprehension, leaving behind only questions whispered on the wind. The truth, it seems, remains as deeply buried as the bodies of those who perished on Kholat Syakhl, waiting to be fully unearthed from the snows of time and secrecy. And perhaps that is why the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident will continue to be told, forever captivating those who dare to ponder the limits of human understanding in the face of the impossible. As the Russian Prosecutor General's office closed its renewed investigation in 2020, declaring a natural event, specifically a wind slab avalanche followed by hypothermia as the definitive cause. A collective sigh of both relief and dissatisfaction rippled through the online communities and amateur sleuth who had been captivated by the Dyatlov Pass for decades. The official statement aimed to provide closure, yet for many, it felt like an ending that still left too many threads dangling, too many shadows clinging to the slopes of Kolat-Sayako.
They meticulously reconstructed the scenario. A slow-moving slab of snow built up by catabolic winds detaching above the tent around 1 a.m. It wasn't a roaring, destructive cascade, but a heavy, deliberate mass that pressed down on the tent, causing severe, blunt force trauma to those inside. The fractured ribs of Zolotaryov, the skull injury of Slobodin, the crushed chest of Dubina. Panic, then, would be an understatement. Trapped and injured, they cut their way out, fleeing into the ferocious blizzard, disoriented and half-naked. The sub-zero temperatures, the blinding snow, the adrenaline-fueled terror, it was a perfect storm of environmental killers. The first 5 succumbed to hypothermia relatively quickly. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin, likely attempting to return to the visible beacon of their damaged tent, collapsed on the slope, their last desperate steps imprinted on the snow. Krivonyshenko and Yuri Boroshenko, retreating to the relative but ultimately insufficient shelter of the forest, built a pathetic fire before succumbing to exposure, their bodies showing the tragic signs of freezing to death. The remaining 4, Dubinina, Zolotaryov, Kolevatov, and Thibaut Brignol, Volkov's corrected name from the records, managed to survive longer, retreating into a ravine. There, beneath a protective overhang of snow, they built a shelter. They stripped clothes from their fallen comrades, a grim act of survival. But their severe injuries, sustained during the initial tent impact, would seal their fate. Dubinina, with her crushed chest, likely fell into the stream, exacerbating her injuries and leading to the eventual grotesque disfigurement by scavenging animals and the effects of water submersion. Zolotaryov, too, suffered from internal trauma. The radiation on some of their clothes was attributed to either natural background radiation in certain rocks or residual radium from their watches or even equipment brought from their jobs in the nuclear industry. The orange spheres cited by other groups? Possibly rocket debris or atmospheric phenomena. This modern, comprehensive reevaluation, backed by scientific modeling and a re-examination of original documents, provides a powerful, if stark, narrative. It strips away the fantastic and grounds the tragedy in the brutal, unforgiving reality of the Ural Mountains. It posits that there was no monstrous creature, no military conspiracy, no infrasound-induced terror, but simply a terrible convergence of natural forces and human vulnerability. Yet, for many, the natural force explanation, even with scientific backing, leaves an ache. It struggles to fully account for the sheer visceral terror implied by their actions. To cut one's way out of a tent in -30 degrees Celsius and flee barefoot into the blizzard suggests a level of primal fear that a slowly collapsing snow slab might not fully evoke. Why did they not try to retrieve warmer clothes from the tent, even if it was damaged? Why the disparate injuries, the seemingly random scattering of bodies, some partially clothed, others almost naked? And the radiation, however negligible the official report states, still introduces an element of the unnatural into a purely natural explanation. The Dyatlov Pass incident thus remains an incomplete narrative, a story with an official ending that feels unsatisfying to the human heart, which craves a more complete understanding of such profound suffering. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, even with all the evidence,
all the science and all the official pronouncements, the human imagination will continue to grapple with the unknown. What truly happened on that desolate, windswept slope on the night of February 2nd, 1959, might forever be shrouded in the blizzards of Kholat Sakh. Was it an act of God, a malevolent conspiracy, or something else entirely, a phenomenon we simply lack the language or understanding to articulate? The 9 young adventurers who set out on an ambitious journey encountered something that stole their lives and in turn stole a piece of certainty from the world. And so the legend endures. Each retelling, each new theory, each re-examination of the faded photographs of the tent and the faces of the lost serves as a poignant reminder that some mysteries refuse to be neatly solved. The Dyatlov Pass incident stands as a chilling monument to the terror of the wilderness, the fragility of life, and the enduring power of the unexplained. It whispers from the frozen peaks, "Don't go there," not just to the mountain, but to the very edges of our comprehension. And in that whisper, the true, horrifying fascination of Dyatlov Pass will forever reside, a perpetual winter ghost story echoing through the annals of history.